The Dominion warships emerged from hyperspace like a storm of metal and light, their massive hulls blotting out the stars above Earth. Humanity's orbital defenses, pride of 3 centuries of space exploration, crumbled under their first salvo. Billions watched in horror as the alien fleet positioned itself for what they assumed would be humanity's last dawn. That's when Ryoko Tanaka made her decision. Standing in the secret underground facility beneath the Martian ice caps, the quantum physicist stared at the experimental ship she'd spent the last decade developing. The constellation wasn't supposed to be ready for another year, but Earth didn't have that long. Director Tanaka, her second-in-command, James Walsh, approached with a tablet displaying the latest casualty reports. The Dominion has destroyed our lunar colonies. Earth's governments are in chaos. Ryoko's fingers traced the constellation's obsidian hull, its surface rippling like liquid shadow under her touch. How many pilots survived the initial attack? Just 1 squadron. They're being evacuated to Mars now. James hesitated. Including Commander Zara Hassan. A ghost of a smile crossed Ryoko's face. Zara. The only pilot who'd ever managed to sync with the constellation's quantum navigation system during testing. Maybe it wasn't coincidence she'd survived. The facility shook as another wave of Dominion ships entered the system. Their long-range sensors were already detecting traces of the Martian bases. They had hours, at most. Prep the ship, Ryoko ordered, her voice steady despite the tremors. And get Commander Hassan here now. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of activity. While the constellation systems were brought online, Ryoko selected her crew with surgical precision. Besides Zara as pilot, she chose Nikolai Petrov, a genius in xenotechnology who'd spent years studying fragments of alien tech. For communications and electronic warfare, she picked Tamil prodigy Priya Reddy, whose understanding of quantum entanglement had helped build the ship's revolutionary stealth system. When Zara arrived, still in her scorched flight suit, her dark eyes widened at the sight of the constellation. So the rumors were true. You actually built it. Not just built it, Ryoko said, leading her through the ship's crystalline corridors. We've created something that breaks every rule the Dominion thinks they know about physics. Their technology relies on brute force, massive engines, powerful weapons. We went the opposite direction. They reached the bridge, where Nikolai and Priya were already at their stations, running final checks. The ship's interior was unlike anything in humanity's fleet, no traditional controls, just flowing surfaces that responded to thought and touch. The constellation doesn't fight force with force, Ryoko continued. It manipulates spacetime itself. Every system is built on quantum principles that the Dominion science hasn't even discovered yet. We're not going to beat them with bigger guns. We're going to show them that everything they know about warfare is wrong. Zara ran her hand along the pilot's interface, and the ship hummed in response, recognizing her quantum signature. How many ships can it take on? That's the wrong question, Ryoko said, taking her command position. The real question is, how do we use one ship to make an entire fleet destroy itself? The facility's warning systems blared. The Dominion had found them. As the first enemy ships entered Mars orbit, Ryoko gave the order to launch. The constellation rose from its underground berth, its quantum drive already bending reality around them. They're targeting us, Priya reported, her hands dancing across her console. 7 capital ships, moving to surround us. Ryoko nodded to Zara. Show them what humanity can do when we're pushed to the edge. The constellation shot forward, but not in any direction the Dominion could track. It moved through spaces between spaces, following paths that existed only in quantum probability. Enemy fire passed through empty air as Zara guided them through dimensions that conventional sensors couldn't detect. Quantum field generator at full power, Nikolai called out. Ready to initiate the cascade. This was the moment Ryoko had prepared for. Everything they'd learned about Dominion technology had led to this. Their ships were connected through a sophisticated network, sharing targeting data and tactical information. But that network had never been tested against quantum interference. Execute primary sequence, Ryoko ordered. The constellation released its first quantum pulse, and space itself seemed to shudder. On their screens, they watched as the nearest Dominion ship systems began to fail, its energy weapons turning inward, its shields collapsing under their own power. The chain reaction spread through the enemy fleet like a virus, each ship's attempt to compensate only accelerating its own destruction. Within minutes, the mighty Dominion fleet hung dead in space, their crews floating in powerless hulks. The constellation emerged from its quantum field, now visible to all. Send the message, Ryoko commanded. All frequencies, all languages. Priya activated the communications array, and Ryoko's words echoed across space. To the Dominion Empire, you thought humanity would be an easy conquest. You were wrong. This was your only warning. The next time you threaten Earth, we won't leave survivors to carry our message. As they turned back toward Mars, Ryoko watched the stunned enemy ships drift against the starfield. The real war was just beginning, but humanity had something the Dominion never expected: hope. And hope, combined with human ingenuity, was the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. News of the constellation's victory spread through human space like wildfire. Within days, the quantum pulse that had disabled the Dominion fleet became known as the Silent Thunder, a weapon that struck without sound or fury, yet brought the mightiest ships in the galaxy to their knees. But aboard the constellation, Ryoko knew better than to celebrate too early. She stood in the ship's observation dome, watching as salvage teams stripped the dead Dominion vessels for technology. Each piece they recovered revealed both the alien strengths and their fundamental weaknesses. Their arrogance is coded into their systems, Nikolai reported, examining a recovered navigation computer. His workspace was cluttered with dismantled alien tech, each piece meticulously labeled. They never conceived that a primitive species could operate in quantum space. Their sensors don't even scan those frequencies. Priya looked up from her own analysis. But they're learning. I'm detecting new encryption patterns in their communications. They're adapting faster than we anticipated. Ryoko had expected this. The Dominion hadn't conquered half the galaxy by remaining static. Then we changed the game again. Zara, what's our status on the quantum mapping? Commander Hassan's hands danced across her console, bringing up a holographic display of nearby space. Quantum probability paths glowed like threads of blue lightning between the stars. I've identified 3 major Dominion supply routes they think are secret. Their ships hide in regular space, but the quantum wake of their engines leaves traces we can track. The next phase of Ryoko's plan was already in motion. While the Dominion expected them to defend Earth, the constellation would take the fight to them. But not through brute force, through precision strikes that would unravel their military infrastructure piece by piece. They're marshalling a response fleet, James reported, studying long-range sensor data. Biggest concentration of ships I've ever seen. At least 300 capital vessels, all equipped with new shielding designed to resist our quantum pulse. Ryoko smiled. Perfect. They're thinking linearly: if one defense doesn't work, add more defenses. They still don't understand what they're really fighting. The crew gathered around the tactical display as Ryoko outlined her strategy. The constellation's quantum drive didn't just allow them to move through space differently, it let them manipulate probability itself. Each time the Dominion adapted to one of their tactics, they opened themselves to 3 new vulnerabilities. Here's what they don't know, Ryoko explained, highlighting key points in the display. Every countermeasure they implement creates quantum entanglement points in their defense grid. We're not going to attack their ships directly. We're going to turn their own protective network into a weapon. Priya's eyes widened as she understood. A quantum feedback loop. Their shields will amplify our pulse instead of blocking it. Precisely. Nikolai, how long to reconfigure the pulse generator? The Russian engineer did quick calculations. 4 hours, maybe 5. But we'll only get one shot before they realize what we're doing. One shot is all we need. Ryoko turned to Zara. Plot us a course through probability space. I want us to hit them from an angle they consider mathematically impossible. The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. The constellation systems were pushed to their theoretical limits as Nikolai and Priya worked to reconfigure the quantum pulse. Zara spent hours in deep synchronization with the navigation system, plotting a course through dimensions that human minds could barely comprehend. When they finally emerged from quantum space, they found themselves behind the Dominion Armada. 300 ships, arranged in perfect formation, their new shields gleaming with energy. They never saw the constellation coming. Multiple locks on our position, Priya reported calmly. They're adapting faster this time. Shields redirecting energy to resist quantum interference. Let them, Ryoko commanded. Initiate the pulse sequence. The constellation released its modified quantum pulse, but this time it didn't target the ships directly. Instead, it excited the quantum entanglement points in their shield network. Each ship's defensive measures amplified the pulse, passing it on to nearby vessels with increasing intensity. The result was catastrophic. Ships didn't just lose power, their very atomic structure began to destabilize as quantum probability waves cascaded through their hulls. Crews had mere seconds to evacuate before their vessels collapsed into quantum singularities. Within minutes, the mighty armada was reduced to a field of microscopic black holes, each no bigger than a grain of sand. The constellation hung in space, untouched, a silent witness to the power of human ingenuity. Send the message, Ryoko ordered, her voice heavy with the weight of what they'd just done. Let them know that every defensive measure they take against us will only make them more vulnerable. The laws of physics themselves have taken humanity's side. As the message went out, Zara spoke quietly from her station. They won't stop. You know that, right? We've just made them truly afraid of us for the first time. Good. Ryoko watched the field of quantum singularities slowly evaporate into Hawking radiation. Fear might make them think twice before underestimating humanity again. But as they plotted their course back to Earth, Ryoko couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just crossed a line. The Dominion wouldn't just adapt their technology now, they'd be forced to change their entire way of thinking. The real question was, what would they become in their desperate attempt to counter humanity's quantum warfare? The answer to that question would determine the fate of both species, and perhaps the galaxy itself. 3 months after the quantum singularity incident, the Constellation's crew found themselves in an unfamiliar position, waiting. The Dominion had withdrawn all major fleet activities from Earth's sector of space, their usual aggression replaced by an eerie silence that made everyone uneasy. In the ship's quantum lab, Ryoko examined the latest sensor data with growing concern. They're up to something, she muttered, watching patterns shift across the probability displays. The quantum wake signatures are all wrong. Maybe they're finally learning to be cautious, Nikolai suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it. He'd been working non-stop to analyze debris from their last encounter, searching for clues about potential Dominion countermeasures. Priya entered the lab, her usual composed demeanor showing cracks of worry. You need to see this, she said, transferring data to the main display. I've been monitoring quantum fluctuations across their known territories. They're building something. Something big. The holographic display showed massive energy signatures, unlike anything they'd seen before. Whatever the Dominion was constructing, it was bending spacetime in ways that defied conventional physics. Zara joined them, fresh from a quantum navigation drill. They're not just building weapons, she said, studying the display. Look at these pattern variations. They're trying to recreate our technology. Ryoko felt a chill run down her spine. This was what she'd feared most, not that the Dominion would find a way to defeat their quantum technology, but that they'd find a way to copy it. An empire as vast as theirs, armed with quantum warfare capabilities, could devastate countless civilizations. We need to strike now, Zara argued, her pilot's instincts screaming for action. Before they complete whatever this is. But Ryoko saw something in the data that gave her pause. These energy signatures, they're unstable. The Dominion understands the mechanics of quantum technology, but not its underlying principles. They're trying to brute force their way into quantum space. And that's bad? James asked, having silently joined the group. That's catastrophic, Nikolai answered, his eyes widening as he understood. They could tear apart the fabric of spacetime itself. The crew spent the next several hours analyzing the data, each new discovery more alarming than the last. The Dominion wasn't just building quantum weapons, they were constructing massive reality-warping engines that threatened to destabilize entire sectors of space. We have to warn them, Priya said suddenly. Even our enemies don't deserve to have their worlds torn apart by quantum instabilities. Ryoko nodded slowly. But they won't believe us. To them, this is just another human trick. Then we show them, Zara suggested. We take the constellation into their territory. Let them see the consequences of their experiments firsthand. It was a dangerous plan. The Dominion space would be heavily fortified, especially against quantum intrusion. But they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy now depended not on winning a war, but on preventing a catastrophe. The constellation slipped through quantum space, following paths that grew increasingly unstable as they approached Dominion territory. The closer they got to the construction sites, the more reality itself seemed to waver and distort. Multiple quantum fractures detected, Priya reported, her instruments detecting growing instabilities. The spacetime fabric is already starting to tear. Through the quantum distortions, they could see the Dominion's massive construction platforms. Experimental engines larger than cities pulsed with dangerous energy, each surge sending ripples through reality itself. Open a channel, Ryoko ordered. All frequencies, maximum power. But before they could transmit their warning, the nearest quantum engine exploded. Not with fire or radiation, but with a reality-shattering pulse that began to tear apart the very structure of spacetime. Quantum cascade failure. Nikolai shouted. The entire sector is becoming unstable. Ryoko made a split-second decision. Zara, take us in. Nikolai, reconfigure our quantum field generator. We're going to try to contain the cascade. That's impossible, James protested. The energy levels are too high. Nothing's impossible, Ryoko replied, her hands flying across the controls. We just need to think differently. Priya, link our quantum field to their engine network. We're going to use their own power to stabilize the reaction. The constellation dove into the heart of the quantum storm, its system straining as reality buckled around them. Zara's piloting skills were pushed to their absolute limits as she navigated through space that constantly rewrote its own laws of physics. What followed was a desperate race against time as the crew worked to prevent the complete collapse of spacetime in the sector. The Dominion ships around them, finally understanding the danger, began to assist, following the constellation's lead in establishing quantum containment fields. Hours felt like years as they struggled to contain the cascade failure. When it was finally over, both humans and aliens found themselves floating in stabilized space, having just narrowly prevented a disaster that could have unraveled the galaxy itself. As the quantum storm subsided, Ryoko sent a final message to the Dominion fleet: this is what happens when you try to harness powers you don't understand. We didn't develop quantum technology to wage war, but to explore the true nature of reality. Perhaps it's time we shared our knowledge, not as enemies, but as students of the universe. The response that came back would change the course of history: perhaps it is time we talked. The negotiations were set to take place on neutral ground, a space station orbiting a dying star at the edge of both territories. As the constellation approached, its crew could see hundreds of ships from both sides maintaining a careful distance, their weapons powered down but ready. This could still be a trap, James warned as they prepared to dock. The station's quantum signature readings were clean, but after months of warfare, trust came slowly. Ryoko adjusted her formal uniform, the first time she'd worn it since the initial Dominion attack. "Everything's a trap if you look at it the right way," she said. "The question is whether we can turn it to our advantage." The Dominion delegation was already waiting in the station's central chamber. Their leader, High Commander Vexthor, cut an imposing figure, 3 meters tall with crystalline skin that refracted light in hypnotic patterns. His guards wielded weapons that could atomize a human in seconds. Director Tanaka, Vexthor's translator, converted his harmonics into human speech. "Your reputation precedes you. The scientist who turned quantum mechanics into a weapon." "A shield," Ryoko corrected firmly. "Everything we developed was to protect Earth. You forced us to weaponize it." The negotiations began tensely, with both sides laying out their positions. The Dominion wanted access to human quantum technology. Humanity wanted guarantees of independence and protection for other developing civilizations. But as hours stretched into days, something unexpected happened. The scientists on both sides began to find common ground. Nikolai and the Dominion's quantum engineers spent hours discussing theoretical physics. Priya found herself deep in conversation with alien communications experts about the nature of quantum entanglement. Even Zara formed an unlikely connection with a Dominion flight commander, trading stories about flying through impossible spaces. The barriers between species began to crack. Then the proximity alarms blared. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace," Priya reported, rushing back to the constellation's sensors. "They're not broadcasting Dominion or Earth IDs." Ryoko and Vexthor reached the same conclusion simultaneously: pirates. Scavengers who'd been waiting for this moment, when both major powers would be diplomatically constrained from using their full military might. The pirate fleet was massive, they'd clearly been preparing for this opportunity. Their ships were cobbled together from stolen technology, including salvaged Dominion quantum tech. Dangerous and unstable, but effective. "We need to evacuate the station," Vexthor ordered, but the pirates had already begun their attack. The first salvos knocked out the station's primary power, leaving them running on emergency systems. "The station's quantum core is destabilizing," Nikolai reported. "If it breaches, the explosion will take out everything in this system." Ryoko looked at Vexthor. "We need to work together. Right now." The Dominion commander nodded. "What do you propose?" What followed was an unprecedented cooperation between former enemies. The Constellation's crew coordinated with Dominion engineers to stabilize the station's core while their ships engaged the pirates. Zara found herself piloting the Constellation in perfect synchronization with Dominion vessels, their combined tactics taking advantage of both quantum mechanics and conventional warfare. Priya worked with alien communications officers to disrupt the pirates' coordination. Nikolai and his Dominion counterparts raced to prevent a quantum cascade failure that would doom them all. The battle raged across conventional and quantum space. Pirates' ships exploded in normal space while others were torn apart by quantum shear forces. The station's structural integrity dropped by the minute as they fought to evacuate civilians. "Core breach imminent," Nikolai shouted above the chaos. "We can't stop it." "We don't need to stop it," Ryoko realized. "We need to control it." "Vexthor, can your ships generate a quantum containment field?" The Dominion commander understood immediately. "Yes, but it won't be strong enough alone." "It doesn't need to be. The Constellation will link with your fleet. We'll create a quantum lens, focus the explosion into a single point in space." It was an insane plan, requiring perfect coordination between ships that had been trying to destroy each other mere days ago. But they had no choice. As the station's core went critical, the combined fleet moved into position. The Constellation's quantum field merged with the Dominion ship's containment barriers, creating a complex geometric pattern in spacetime. When the explosion came, it was like a new star being born. But instead of expanding outward, the energy was caught in their quantum lens, focused into a tear in space that swallowed the remaining pirate ships before collapsing in on itself. In the aftermath, human and Dominion crews worked side by side on rescue operations. The station was lost, but most of its occupants had survived, saved by cooperation that neither side had thought possible. Ryoko found Vexthor observing the cleanup efforts. "Perhaps," the Dominion commander said slowly, "we have been looking at this wrong from the beginning. Your species' greatest weapon was never your quantum technology." "Oh." Ryoko raised an eyebrow. "It was your ability to turn enemies into allies. To find solutions where we saw only obstacles." He turned to face her fully. "The Dominion has conquered many worlds, but we have never learned from them. Until now." In the weeks following the pirate attack, the face of galactic politics transformed more rapidly than anyone could have predicted. The sight of human and Dominion ships fighting side by side had spread across the galaxy, inspiring both hope and fear in different quarters. Aboard the Constellation, Ryoko reviewed reports from across known space. Some Dominion worlds had begun open rebellion, demanding the same independence that Earth had fought for. Others sought diplomatic channels, requesting human assistance in developing their own quantum technology programs. "The Empire is fracturing," Priya announced during a senior staff meeting, displaying the latest intelligence. "But not the way we expected. It's not collapsing, it's evolving." Nikolai nodded, gesturing to his own data. "They're abandoning conquest in favor of technological exchange. Vexthor's faction is gaining support among the Dominion leadership. But not everyone embraced change. A significant portion of the Dominion military, led by Supreme Marshal Kazthul, saw cooperation with lesser species as an unforgivable weakness. They were gathering forces for one final push, not just against Earth, but against their own reformist leadership. "They're calling it the Purification Fleet," Zara reported, studying tactical readouts. "Every hardline commander in the Dominion is joining them. Over 1,000 capital ships, including experimental weapons platforms we've never seen before." James leaned forward, his expression grim. "Can we stop a force that size?" "We won't have to," Ryoko said quietly. All eyes turned to her. "Because we're not fighting alone anymore." The next day, the Constellation joined an unprecedented gathering of ships in high Earth orbit. Dominion cruisers flew alongside human vessels. Freed alien worlds had sent their own fleets. Even species that had hidden from the Dominion for centuries emerged to stand with humanity. Ryoko stood on the Constellation's bridge, watching the combined fleet take formation. They'd come so far from that first desperate battle over Mars. Humanity had entered the galactic stage fighting for survival. Now they were fighting for the future of all species. The Purification Fleet arrived with the arrogance of those who'd never known defeat. Kazthul's flagship, a behemoth that dwarfed even the largest Dominion warships, led the charge. "They're powering up their quantum weapons," Nikolai warned. "Unstable signatures, they're not even trying to contain the spatial distortions anymore." "They don't care about collateral damage," Ryoko realized. "They'll tear reality apart just to prove their dominance." The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. The Purification Fleet struck with overwhelming force, their weapons creating tears in spacetime itself. But they faced something they couldn't comprehend: unity. The Constellation led the Allied fleet in an intricate quantum dance. Human ingenuity combined with Dominion power and the unique abilities of a dozen other species. Where the Purification Fleet tried to destroy space itself, the Allies worked to preserve it, their ships moving in patterns that strengthened the very fabric of reality. "They don't understand," Ryoko transmitted to all Allied ships. "Reality isn't something to be conquered. It's something to be understood. Protected. Enhanced. Show them what we can achieve together." The Allied fleet moved as one, their combined quantum fields creating something never before seen in the galaxy, a conscious manipulation of spacetime that didn't just defend against the purification fleet's attacks but turned them back on themselves. Kazthol's forces found their quantum weapons reflected back at them, their attempts to tear apart space healing it instead. Ship after ship surrendered as they realized the futility of their attack. The Supreme Marshal himself refused to yield, pushing his flagship's engines beyond their limits in a final assault on Earth. The massive ship's quantum core went critical, threatening to create a rupture that would swallow the solar system. All ships, coordinate with the constellation, Ryoko ordered. Remember the station. Form the lens. This time, thousands of ships moved in perfect harmony, their quantum fields linking to create not just a lens but a sphere of controlled spacetime around Kazthol's dying flagship. When the quantum core exploded, its energy was channeled into a single point, compressed, and transformed. Where Kazthol's flagship had been, a new star was born, small, stable, and perfect. A testament to what could be achieved through cooperation. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed forever. The Dominion transformed from an empire of conquest into a federation of equals. Earth became a center of learning, where species from across the cosmos came to study both quantum physics and cooperation. The constellation remained a symbol of this new age, its crew continuing to explore the boundaries of science and space. But they never forgot the lessons that had brought them here, that the greatest discoveries come not from fighting against reality, but from working in harmony with it. And that the true power of humanity lay not in their technology, but in their ability to turn the impossible into reality by working together. As Ryoko stood on the constellation's observation deck, watching species that had once been mortal enemies working together to build a new future, she smiled. They had started this journey trying to save Earth. They had ended up helping to save the galaxy from itself. And this was only the beginning. The end.